Washington Post had an editorial that was fascinating. They wrote about Snowden, and they said some things that were a little ironic to say the least. They explained in their editorial, in fact, the first U.S. priority should be to prevent Mr. Snowden from leaking information that harms efforts to fight terrorism and conduct legitimate intelligence operations. The U.S.'s first priority should be to get Snowden to stop leaking. He leaked to the Washington Post. I mean, that is a great example of how the media has gotten so far in bed with the government that even when it's their own leaker, the guy who gave them information for an article they broke, it wasn't just The Guardian that broke the story, it's Barton Gellman from the Washington Post. Now their editorial board turns around and goes, tut, tut, tut. Can you believe that? American government, go get him! Here's another part of the article. Mr. Snowden is reported to have stolen many more documents, encrypted copies of which may have been given to allies such as the WikiLeaks organization. They can't help themselves. Like, can you believe it? He might have given it to WikiLeaks. You know who else he gave it to you? You. He gave it to you. So should we investigate you like WikiLeaks? No, we're the Washington Post. That's WikiLeaks. Go get them. Right? Who wrote this editorial? This is madness. Continuing, they say the best solution for both Mr. Snowden and the Obama administration would be his surrender to U.S. authorities, followed by a plea negotiation. He's your source! You're telling your own source, turn yourself into the government. How dare you leak to us and other journalists? Who would go to the Washington Post with a story after that? Apparently, after you go to them with a story and you give them a very valuable story. And by the way, the story that the Washington Post ran was terrific. Now, they held on to it too long as part of the reason that Snowden got impatient, as part of the reason that he sought out Glenn Greenwald, The Guardian, etc. But when they finally wrote the story, it was a very good story by Gellman. And it had a lot of interesting details and some details that The Guardian piece did not have. All right? And in fact, it was a different part of it. Now, Guardian did wind up writing about the similar issue as well. But it was an important article. Now they seem like they're denouncing their own article and the guy who gave it to them. Jack Schaefer writes a couple of funny and very true tweets. Says the Wash Post editorial page wants the NSA leaks that its news pages publish staunched. He goes on to say, note to Washington Post editorial board, Barton Gellman's stories are coming from inside your building. They're in the building. Gawker's Hamilton Nolan writes, take note, potential leakers and whistleblowers inside the U.S. government. The official stance of the Washington Post editorial board is that you should shut up and go to jail. Would-be Washington Post sources may wish to take that information into consideration when choosing where to leak to. And Zach Carter also points out, Washington Post, prosecute our source. It's unbelievable. But what's most unbelievable is that the mainstream press has lost sight of what their role is to such an overwhelming degree that as they wrote this editorial and then presumably it went through several layers and was published, it didn't occur to them the overwhelming irony of what they were doing. That they were basically saying, we work for the government, we think that if you leak to us, you should be turned in and go to jail. This is certainly not what the Fourth Estate is supposed to be, certainly not watchdog journalism. If anything, they're watching out for the government.